right? Correct. Where should I say? Right here?
Yeah.
All right. But today, before I start the presentation here, I just want to make sure that I acknowledge Craig for putting this event together. Thank you so much, and Jeff and his team for letting us having some trials here. It was a trial season for us too. We got a brand new planter. We got all the problems that we could right here. So thank you so much for bearing there with us. So Milo disease and fungicide trials, and you guys might be thinking like, what fungicide trials, right? We got a big drought stress outside, so why are we worried about it? So we're gonna be covering some of that, and before we get in there, just want to bring that up, how important sorghum is for Kansas, right? And if we look in the past 10, 12 years, we see that there is a big transition in Kansas. More acreage of sorghum, keeping it there between 2.5, I'd say, million acres harvest in Kansas, right? And you know, in terms of area, it might be behind of wheat, corn, and soybeans, which makes sense, right? But when we look at how much sorghum production is bringing back in terms of dollar signs, we see here that sorghum and wheat is here in the corner. It's kind of like head to head. Of course, corn is our main crop here, so followed by soybeans, and then sorghum and wheat is right there. So it's, you know, it's definitely it's an important crop for us here in Kansas, and something for us to keep it in mind, because there's always the yield that we're harvesting and the yield that we could be harvesting, right? And the guys outside there, all the seed dealers, they did a pretty good job, I would say, in explaining their varieties, trying to help you guys to maximize that yield potential, specifically for this region in your field. Um, you know, when we think about disease in sorghum, and today we're going to be focusing just, I would say, two disease, not just two disease, but the main disease that we're going to be facing in this area, and I'd say in the majority of the sorghum production area in Kansas. So when we talk about stalk rots, right, I was just talking about that in the field where, you know, there's the lodging that we see and the lodging that we know I'm gonna get 10-30% yield reduction right here, a lot of lodging. It's gonna be hard to get that grain out. But in a condition like this year where we start, if we remember well, while here we planted in a pretty dry and hot condition, but there was some moisture right in that beginning of the season, might be the only moisture that we got. So that wet condition, it's kind of like favorable for disease overall, water and nice temperatures. But what really hit it, and it's hitting sorghum right now, is the drought, right? That drought get those plants very stressed in the fields, and those conditions, it's just the perfect storm for the stalk rot. So, you know, 5% of that total yield that we see in Kansas, it's being kind of like dragged and steal by the stalk rot disease. And when we think about the total value of the crop, 5% is about $50 million just for that stalk rot, and that's an estimation that's pretty much average of the past years, right? Um, as I mentioned, the stalk rot will cause that lodging, which is very characteristic. You press that stalk in the lower stem, you're gonna see, you know, that, you know, pinchy test, we can do it too. Some of the disease, you might see some sclerotia there, some black structure or discoloration, but in other words, we're going to be seeing some lodging. However, I put it right here that maybe more important than that lodging that we're seeing in the field is the yield that we don't see it being stealed by those stalk rots, right? A lot of times, and we did see that outside when we look at our plant population study, right on that front section there where we have 20, 30, up to 70,000, there is a big reduction on the head size. And I question myself right now, yes, there is a plant population and drought effect, but perhaps also a reduced ear and head size just caused by that stress and stalk rot colonization, right? So a lot of fields that we're walking right now, it's still pretty much green or getting dry just because of that drought. We might be seeing already the effect of stalk rots just pushing that yield, right? Dragging that yield. poor filling of grain, and as I said, even like early head lodging as plant maturity, right? So those are the things that we typically will not see in the field until we have lodge. And that's kind of like what worries me a little bit about stalk rots in Kansas. We do have a lot of reports by the end of the season, oh, got 30-20% of the field lodging. What do we do? At that point, there's nothing to do but try to get that grain out of the field. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about it too. So stock rot, it by itself, right? And here I have a table, got some hybrids. I wouldn't worry too much about the hybrids here or the lines, but I highlighted there's 3 fusarians, and the last one is macropomena, which is charcoal rot. And when we look at those hybrids that were inoculated with the stalk rots against the control, we see a significant seed weight per panicle reduction. So again, we're not talking about lodging, we're just talking about biological effect of those stalk rot problems into your crop. And going back to the seed tillers, choosing a good variety that stands out with good seeding rates for the stalk rot problems definitely will help to reduce that seed weight reduction, right? And here is just the same data, but in a better way to see it, right? That we're losing about 20% of the seed weight just by those diseases, just by stalk rot itself. And we put it, in the paper in a bigger area or area that you have had problems before, it can definitely be significant in your yield, even though you're not seeing launch. So another found this work when I was getting ready for this presentation. I thought was interesting. Not just think about the weight of the panicle or the seeding, but how stalk rots may also reduce the chlorophyll index across different hybrids, right? So here I have fusarian and macropomena against the control. Those are inoculated plots. And over 2 seasons, this work was done by Dr. Chris Leto at K-State. And we see that, it also is contributing for, in other words, less grain plants, which will less chlorophyll. What happens? Less grain filling, less yield. So there's I would say some secondary effect of the stalk rot disease and things for us to consider, right? But as I mentioned about charcoal rot and macropomena, just to give name and picture here to what I'm saying. So here I have charcoal rot. I would say it's our #1 disease in terms of stalk rots, not just in sorghum, but corn, soybeans. Charcoal rot infects, over 500 plant species, 100 plus families, including our main rotations, right? We need to be careful if we have charcoal rot problems in the field and you're doing some of this rotation, you're actually not helping to reduce the inoculum, right? The best rotation for charcoal rot specifically, it's wheat. 2 years of wheat might help reducing that initial inoculum, that pressure. Symptom-wise in the field, and we saw that in Bavaria this morning, the plots were there, premature death of the plant, right? Those are vascular disease. So what happened is that water gets shut down, stop translocating up in the plant, and that plant just kind of wilt and die. When we split the stalk, what we're gonna see is charcoal rot causes shredded pith, very characteristic, and there's some kind of pepper-like structures in the middle of that stalk, and we like very complicated names, but it's called macrosclerotia. In other words, that structure will survive in the soil for many years. That's one of the challenges of managing charcoal rot is this disease. It's very persistent in our soils, right? It's a soil-borne disease. And then eventually smaller heads, lodging, those are the things that we're going to be seeing. The second one that I want to mention here today is fusarian stalk rot, as I showed in those graphs before. the fact of, sitting weight and chlorophyll as well, the symptoms and are the same. Premature death, lodging. However, when we split the stalk now, we're not gonna see that shredded pith now. We're gonna be seeing this reddish pink salmon discoloration. We see some stalk disintegration as well, which will everything where it's leading to lower yield, smaller heads. It's kind of like, it's a domino effect, right, with those stalk rot disease. So here's just another picture, not as clear as the other one before, but we do see some, pinkish discoloration right here in the pith. Again, Fusarium, very hard to manage itself in the field. Can overwinter in corn residue. So sorghum, Milo, and corn. It's not a good rotation when we have the Fusarium stalk rot. Temperature-wise, 80 to 100. I think outside was probably 100 today. Anything that is stress the plants and it's on that temperature range, it kind of like it becomes favorable for those stalk rots. So again, premature death, lodging, reddish inner stalk, and stalk disintegration. A little bit of management, and we're gonna get more into this. Avoiding root damage, it's important because root damage caused by weed and insects. Everything that causes damage on that root, it's kind of like an open wound, and the pathogen sees that as like, oh, that's a spot right there, but just help with the infection and colonization on that plant. Control of insects, other disease, weeds, and timely harvest. We're going to be talking a little bit more about it, but timely harvest here is just because, if you know that you got a problem that will cause lodge, you gotta get that grain out of that field before, the heads are on the ground. I know it's hard sometimes yield-wise or moisture percentage, right? The elevators are not going to take that, waiting at 15%. However, it's something to consider, and depending on the intensive or severity of this in the field, it should be at least thought about. So our current recommendations are pretty much right here, right? So we start with, our seed dealers were telling us outside some of the hybrids with, pretty good stalk strength and stay grain characteristics. That's our number one thinking for the next season. At this point right now, identifying if you can start planning ahead of the game, right? Balanced fertility, we say that if you have too much nitrogen, as Craig was saying just now, that balanced fertility, soil sampling, getting right there what you need, it definitely helps. And also the balance between nitrogen and potassium. There is some important ratio there where we have to keep everything that we do to help manage stalk rots. It's kind of like we have to take it. It's a disease that it's not gonna be like one tool or one thing that we do will help. It takes more than one, and probably will take all your toolbox to get this, pretty much well managed, right? Root damage, as we talked, caused by insects, disease, or weeds. Timely harvest, very important when we're, on that lodging effect already. We're just trying to get that grain. Anything that helps to preserve moisture, plant population, planting date, length of the total length that will be in the field, like a short variety or a long variety, or a year like this, where it's drought, and Craig was talking about plant population like 35. Plants are doing a lot better than and higher than that, right? So anything that we do to avoid getting those plants under stress will definitely help to manage or pass by those diseases. And again, check hybrid lodging rates. It's It's available. You can ask your seed dealers. They all have that information for you guys. So, so as I mentioned, that's our current recommendation in Kansas, right? And last year, I talked with Craig and Jay Wisby, and I mentioned to them like, hey, we gotta do something. We gotta put some trials out to try to understand what's going on. A lot of growers, and you guys know this better than I do in Kansas, they're not spraying sorghum or even like putting much towards the fungicides in sorghum. However, looking at the numbers here today, we saw that stalk rots are causing about 5% of that yield reduction. So we came up with I asked Craig and Jay help for finding a grower with stalk rot problems. They helped me out. We found a field in Bavaria where the grower have had a lot of lodging the past 2 years. And if I'm not wrong, it was Milo, wheat Milo, right, Craig? Uh, or Milo.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had the disease, we confirmed the disease was present there. And what we did is there is this new product by FMC, which basically the name itself it's new. They're using a lot of it's called Xyway. They're using a lot of in corn at the moment for gray leaf spot control. In my trials, I have seen about 50% of gray leaf spot reduction. It's not, I would say, a bulletproof product. However, it does help lower that initial inoculum. So, application time, we had that planting, applied in furrow, and we're going to be talking in furrow, dribble over the top, and dribble over the top off 2 inches the furrow, right? We also put out a treatment at mid flowering in combination with at planting time in a lawn. So flutriapole belongs to that group 3 DMI fungicides. We have Polycure, Tilt, Procure. So if you guys are growing wheat and corn or sorghum, you probably have heard about those products before, which will fall all into this same category here. So this was us at planting date June 17th, same day that we planted this field. I was telling Jeff that everything went pretty much well on this field, and we can grow Milo, even though that he doesn't believe it yet. But we can definitely grow Milo. So this is the planter. So basically, we have 7 cams in the back here. It's all by GPS, and as we drive by the plots, each can gets activated. You guys have those planters too. It's everything by GPS now, right? So in the back here, it's where the 0x0 or surface goes in. There's another one that's 2-inch pot, and in the front, I have this cutters here that kind of like puts that 2x2, right? The 2x2 is basically 2 inches off the furrow and 2 inches down by the seed furrow. So, and I told Bruce Stewart, which is our collaborator at FMC, like, Bruce, if there is something for us to do in sorghum, needs to be stalk rot, right? And that's why we want to see if there's any effect on this treatment. And today, we had a field day in Bavaria at the plots. We're there in the morning. Those pictures we're taking this morning. I took them out from each plot right on that. I would say I was like at the stake, and I took the pictures. What I have seen so far, not much difference among the treatments. Here we're going to be going treatment by treatment. I have the no-fitted control. Leaf-wise, it's pretty much clean. We have a little bit of leaf blight, which is that same disease that we see in corn called northern corn leaf blight. It's a big problem in the southern states. Here in Kansas, in corn, it's more like an aesthetic damage. In sorghum, field growers that spray, it might be helping with that disease, but I would say I never seen a field that really calls for a fungicide. Maybe there is, and I haven't seen many fields. But so here's the non-treated control, and we have side by side here Xyway, LFR just stands for liquid fertilizer ready. at the highest rate, 15.2, apply a 2x2 at planting. So, there's visually, look at those plots, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't see any difference in plant height or number of heads. We were there measuring chlorophyll this morning, the guys here were helping me there. So we're trying to understand, like, is this doing anything or it will do any good, right? But also, no difference between the non-treated control with the treatment. It's also good because we're not causing any damage. And xylate, they did have some problems in corn, Milo already, where they did see some damage on those plants. So the next treatment here, again, we did it surface dribble at 0. That means, goes that furrow and the product was applied right on top. We did not see visually, there's not much difference among any treatments. But I want to show you guys, it's not labeled for sorghum, it's labeled for corn and cotton. But if this becomes labeled, we are testing and we're trying to see if this is going to work or what will does to the crop, right? This is dribble 2 inch off the furrow at that same rate. Again, no difference between the non-treated and this treatment. In terms of foliar, the field is, as I said, very clean. However, my main concern is, and I told the guys today, about like November when we're planning to harvest, I want to go back to that field and split stock and see like, hey, or see the lodging or see not lodging, right? So that's why I want to show you what we're doing there, but this is not the main thing that I'm looking for. Right here, I just want to show that we didn't see any damage or any visually yield reduction from the treatments. This is a very interesting treatment where we apply xylate in a lower rate at 10.5 fluid ounce per acre, followed by a top guardicule. Top guardicule, you guys know this, it's fluotriafol, which is the same product that we have in xylate, plus azoxystrobin. So we have now 2 active ingredients on top guard applied at mid-flower. Again, plants are looking beautiful. They got 2 inches of rain, I think mid-August, and that really, like, it looks like a garden on that region. It's a very, I would say, high yield potential. There was a Pioneer seed dealer here. This is a Pioneer hybrid. And the last treatment that we have is a top guardicule at 5 fluid ounce per acre applied at mid-flower. So here I'm trying to answer a few things, right? The effect on stalk rots, but also some growers are spraying Milo. And, especially on that region, there's a little bit more, a few more growers there that did mention that they're spraying. So what are they spraying for? Is it really paying off? So those are the questions that I kind of want to address at the end of this trial. And hopefully next year we can repeat it, put it in a few more locations, and try to start seeing a little bit of environment effect as well. Because if we had that trial here, things would look different. It's just not the same, right? Like, we miss all the rain here, unfortunately. So the last thing that I want to mention, and moving forward, rain will come. Hopefully rain will come. And we need water, right? We plant things on the corner. And with that rain that will come late in the season, we might start seeing some what they call grain mold, right? Sometimes when the harvesting, Milo combines start being black, and you see that kind of like that pseudo mold that we see in wheat. We saw it 2 years ago, a year ago, some of the combine. But basically, as the grain are drying down, some water will let those grain molds just to grow through the chemical, and that's what's going to be looking with a moldy head, right? So in sorghum, different than wheat and corn, the grain mold is not a problem for us here in Kansas. Might be a problem in other parts, but there's not like, as I mentioned there, it's not dangerous to the livestock, and there's not a toxin that's produced with the mold in sorghum. In corn, we have aspergillus, we have aflatoxin that's produced. There's another one, the Dawn toxin that we see in wheat. We also see it in corn. In wheat, as I mentioned, FHP is our main concern. It was 2 years ago, we had a pretty much outbreak here in Kansas with a lot of elevators getting, get discount at the elevator because of high levels of toxin. So we don't see it, those toxins being a problem for us in sorghum. This is just, a more advanced stage of the grain mold. So why it matters, right? Grain mold, what happens is at that last stage where they're trying to get your grain out of the field, kind of like get hit it again. And reduce yield just by reducing that weight of the grain, poor seed quality, and germination. So if you're a seed producer, that's a concern because you don't want to have that problem, low germination in your field. And storage too can be a concern if you're storing that grain for long periods of time, high moisture. So our recommendation, well, it starts with hybrids again. Hybrid selection is our best, I would say, way to manage this disease. And we did see some browns and reds are more resistant to higher tannin levels. That's something to look for if you had problems before. And again, that will be more associated with water, right? We have rains and grains out sitting in the field. Try to get that harvest before those points. And I know it's always easy to pass those recommendations, right? Crop rotation and timely harvest, it's always a challenge. And even like planting, when we're planting here, it's always like, oh, you gotta plant by this date, but there was water and delay and everything got like, anyway, so I do understand it's not an easy recommendation, although it might sound. So do not store moldy grains for long periods of time. That will just keep increasing. And if you can, this is another, I would say, pretty harsh number, 10%. Keep your grain below 10. We're talking about harvest at 15, perhaps getting that grain at 13, right? 10 is kind of like, I would say, it's pretty much hard. However, it will help in containing that disease and making sure that's below 50 Fahrenheit. So my next part here, do you guys have any questions so far? I would say Chandler Day, she is here. She is our associated diagnostician with the plant clinic in Manhattan. So whenever you guys send us a sample, and I'll pass the mic to Chandler.
Promise, I'll be fast. Great. I just wanted to quickly talk. So Chandler Day, I've been with K-State for about 5 years, but in this position since January. So still relatively new, still have a lot to learn, but love to look at sick plants. So send me all your stuff, right? So just want to talk a little bit about what a good sample looks like. So the best thing that you can do is send us the entire plant. I know that's more in shipping, but more plants lead to more answers. So the best thing to do is get a gradient of plants. So something good to something bad. And when I say bad, I don't mean dead, because we don't do autopsies in the clinic. We do diagnostics. We can't tell you what's going on if we just have dead material, because saprophytes and just junk fungi jump on and it masks what we're actually looking for. So collecting the whole plant, collecting a gradient, that's really important. I would say when we're talking about sorghum or corn, it's really good. It's tall, right? It can be. So just chop it off at the base, chop it off, snap it in half. It's okay. I can puzzle it back together later. The most important thing, though, is to get those roots in soil. So dig the plant up. Just don't yank it out, although that's not very easy this year, depending on your soil type. But, get a shovel, dig it out, put it in a plastic bag, tie that plastic bag off. If it's corn, cut the roots, cut the base, cut the stalk, put it in a plastic bag. I say just throw it in a Walmart sack or a Dillon's bag, tie it up, take the rest of the plant and put it into a bigger trash bag. So Sorry. So just making sure that you're putting it in plastic. So you do soil tests, you throw your stuff in paper bags. Paper is not going to be great. It dries out the sample. We want the sample to arrive in the best condition possible. We want to see what you're seeing out in the field. So along that line, you want to ship as quickly as possible. So kind of going back to what Craig was talking about earlier, leaving your sample in the truck, even just, you collect it in the morning and it sits in the truck all day, you can just bake the crap out of it, and I can't find anything on there. So making sure that even if you just throw it in a cooler, in the cab of your truck in a cooler, that really does help. And throwing it in a plastic bag, tying that bag off, trying to keep those plants moist, but without putting any wet paper towels or anything like that in there. So again, shipping overnight, we had issues. I know not everybody's able to do UPS or FedEx. It does cost more, but the better looking the plant is, the better answers I can give you. So what else? Just a little bit about what we do in the diagnostic lab. Sometimes we get, if you've got a leaf disease, we can look at that leaf disease like leaf blight on sorghum. We can look at that and say, okay, yeah, I look at it under a microscope and I can get you an answer in 2 days. Sometimes the problem's more complicated than that, and I need to either consult with somebody else or I need to put it on a petri dish and culture it out. If you have a sore throat, they want to check for strep, they're going to swab your throat and you have to wait several days before you get answers. That's how it goes with cultures for plant diagnostics too. So sometimes you get answers in 2 days, sometimes it takes 2 weeks. So you got to be patient with us. Always feel free to call. Rodrigo's put our phone number up here. And I also I'll just finish off with making sure that if you ever do send samples, filling out our sample submission form, putting as much information on that form as possible, your hybrid or your variety, depending on what that is, what kind of sample you're sending in, and then if you've applied anything, put as much information on there as possible. And then if and when possible, send pictures to us. Email them to clinic@ksu.edu. We are happy to look at pictures before you ever send a sample in, and we can kind of give you a rough idea of maybe what we think is going on. And then we can say, well, to really say that this is what it is, we need you to send it into the lab so I can take a look at it. 3 pictures are ideal. One of the problem close-up, one of the entire plant, and then one of the site. That site picture is really important. It helps us see, is this a low spot in the field? Is this a patch in the field? Is this widespread across the field? Seeing those patterns is really important. So with that, clinic@ksu.edu is going to be a great resource for you.
No, let's throw in there. I'm always available.
Yes.
I've actually collected samples, plant samples for people just so,
Yeah.
or if I just go to the field and I know what it is, I can save that hassle from, sending in a sample. Or like I said, if I don't know what it is, then I can properly collect the sample, send it in, and then also we get a little bit of a discount.
There's discount associated with that. Yeah. So yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah, always go through your extension agent. They're your first resource. They're the boots on the ground. They know what problems you guys are seeing. They may have seen it in the field yesterday. So they're your go-to person, and if he doesn't know, or whenever your agent doesn't know, they'll pass it up the chain.
And the same goes with soil samples. We got soil probes that you can check out at our offices. We can send in soil samples, and I'm always happy to review any soil tests with farmers. And formulate a fertilizer plan for anybody. And I've even gone out and sampled a field or two for a guy that's needed. So that service is always available through our both of our offices. Like I said, my main office is Ellsworth, but I should bounce around throughout both counties. So yeah, I think that wraps it up. And, Jeff will say some quick words and we'll eat some good food.
Okay, yes. They always say there's no free lunch, right? You guys